Okay, great. I think we are live. Great. Okay, so I wanted to speak this morning to the essential ingredient that we need if we actually want to create behavioral change. So this is both what I've noticed in myself and in clients continuously. And it's not the only piece of the puzzle, but it's an essential piece of the puzzle. So, okay, so when we're encountering a situation of repeating a behavior that we are not desiring within ourselves, well, a lot is going on there. First off, we're getting payoff from whatever that behavior is. And currently, the payoff that we're getting is more valuable and important to us than the payoff we think we want. So that's actually a very important first step. That was not my intention to talk about, but unless we have clarity on what the payoff is, it is very hard to make a different choice. So, and very often the payoff is avoiding some sort of discomfort, some sort of uncomfortable feeling within your own system. So that's kind of a very broad way of saying it. Then you want to be exploring the dynamic that you are currently engaging in, that you want to be different, getting clarity for yourself. Okay, why is my system defaulting to this? Why am I choosing this? There is a payoff. What is it? Yeah, it's likely either an avoidance of an unpleasantness, or grabbing onto a current sort of feed, like a biochemical feed or rush or feeling that is like kind of like sugar, right? It's going to be like a give you a hit of some sort, and and your system's addicted to that, versus the deeper, actually more satisfying, more nourishing hit that your cognitive mind knows you want. Okay, that was kind of an aside, but a preamble that's good to do before the fact. Then the other thing, and the thing I really wanted to talk about today, is it is very important to zoom in on the moments, as we reflect on the moment where we made, for example, where we made the choice we didn't actually really want to make. We need to zoom in on that moment. We need to really deepen our awareness of what happened in that moment. What happened in that moment, expanding it out, zooming in, or those sequence of moments, sometimes many sequences of moments, right? We need to zoom in, and we need to decide that we are doing differently, right? But we can't just blanket decide we're doing differently. No, I'm never going to eat sugar again, whatever. Unless we can link the decision up with an actual trigger or response in time, we are not going to do any differently in the future. That is just, it's not going to work, right? Then the desire, the decision merely stays as an idea. In order to really integrate it into behavior, we have to reflect on also the physiological experience that we tend to have when that pattern of events unfolds. And we need to decide that we want to do differently. And we need to kind of take a scan at the timeline of the unfolding and connect that decision to do better up to a specific moment in that unfolding, so that we can notice it in that moment. Again, otherwise, this new behavior desire has nothing to link into in terms of the reality that is going to present. So, okay, there's a bit more I want to say that I'm going to see if I can give an example. Okay, So, okay, what's the other thing I wanted to say here? So, okay, maybe I go to the example right now. So I was talking with a client yesterday who doesn't fully trust themselves or isn't allowing themselves to fully go into a place of rest because their system doesn't trust that they'll move out of the rest into the action that's necessary to accomplish what they feel they need to accomplish. So they're in this kind of catch-22 place of not well, right now they're in good momentum in terms of the action, but the rest is scary because they don't trust the mechanism to come out of rest and back into action, because in the past they don't necessarily have a good history of doing that. So I'm realizing there could be other dynamics at play as well. So the situation is multifaceted, but I'm just going to simplify it to this one dynamic in order to make a point. So their job is to reflect back to the moments of rest and that transition moment into action, and to look at, okay, what often happens that is causing me to not trust the natural impulse that will arise. Our systems are exceedingly wise and will provide the natural, useful impulse to move you into the next stage of action or activity or rest as your system actually needs, right? So in a sense, this is actually about learning to follow the impulse when it comes, and respect and respond to that impulse when it comes. It isn't necessarily only into action. It could also be into rest. And I think usually those are going to be fairly equal, right? The more we develop our willingness to move into a state of rest and to respond to when our system is hungry for that and genuinely give our system that, the more likely we are to actually trust also and respond to the impulse to move us out of rest and into action. So that's an aside. So back to this moment. So then it's their job to really zoom in on this moment. Okay, what happens when I'm in rest and that impulse of action comes? Where am I avoiding it? Though in this person's case, the avoidance is actually in both ends of the spectrum. There's an avoidance of moving into the rest period because it is uncomfortable. When we rest and slow down, we're left with the energetic, emotional reality of our system, which for a lot of us is not particularly pleasant yet. And but also just to say, we are also in a time where the energy is continually increasing, and each human's system is being challenged to process and meet greater intensities of energy is not a satisfying word, but our capacity to be present to an intensity of sensation within our body is being stretched. So all the more reason for the rest, right? And also all the more reason for just knowing that, and then having an awareness that, okay, that likely my transition point is going to be a bit uncomfortable. Even just knowing that ahead of time supports our decision, right? It's like, okay, now having zoomed in on this moment of going into rest, I know that often there's this discomfort that arises in my system. What is its texture? What are the thoughts that perhaps accompany it? The more awareness we can bring to exactly what transpires in that moment, the more capacity we have to actually make a different choice, because all of that awareness is an anchor to kind of draw in the new decision into that moment. So Okay, so then they get to be aware of like, okay, discomfort arises in my system. Oh yeah, this kind of typical biophysical emotional texture arises. What my system wants to do, the default behavior in the past has been to stay in action. This is all occurring unconsciously, to stay in action in order to avoid that discomfort. Now, I am deciding to choose that when I feel that, it's like, so, okay, so part of my brain says, okay, let's rest now. Typically in the past, I would have gone, no, you know, whereas now I'm deciding that, okay, I'm choosing to rest as my system moves towards it and there's some discomfort or intensity that arises. I'm not going to take that as a sign to move the other way unconsciously. Instead, I'm going to take that as, okay, yeah, welcoming this and moving into rest. It's actually a sign I'm making an excellent choice. Moving into resting. Great. And so it's a little bit difficult to talk about because the important thing to link to, again, this is the whole point of this thing is that specificity is the key to behavioral change. And you need to be very specific about not just what you think you do in that moment, but actually what is the sensorial reality, sensorial, emotional, physiological, psychic, all of the things, reality that occurs, and then draw that decision into that point. The other thing you want to do is look for a very specific, in a sense, moment in the chain of events, right? And you want to, that's another thing we often do wrong. We're like, no, I want to do differently, never going to eat sugar. And it's like way too blanket. It doesn't connect to anything. And it's just, and so it's this statement that is not rooted in anything. In order for it to root, as well as having the specificity and deepening the awareness of what occurs in that moment and anchoring it to that, we also want to gauge my system. There's a kind of readiness in my system. Okay, this I can commit to. This, like, my system can't even connect with the possible. I'm doing this in terms of moments in the chain of time where it's like, okay, when the first impulse occurs to rest, following that in that moment might be too distant for my system to genuinely connect to. So then it is for me to feel, as I scan the behavior that I'm currently doing, okay, well, what am I committed to? What can I actually commit to? Your system is going to be able to discern and feel and sense that moment. It's not just guesswork. You're going to be able to feel what can I do differently? What can I commit? What am I committing to do differently next time? 100%. And maybe it's simply, okay, I'm going to catch myself a moment sooner. I'm going to catch myself a moment sooner instead of going, oh, discomfort, back into action. Or maybe, okay, I'm going to do that 3 times. On the 3rd time, the thought occurs to, anytime the thought to rest occurs 3 times, on that 3rd time, I am 100% going to follow that impulse. So, I'm hoping this example serves. It's going to be much more useful if you can tie it to something specific in your life. Please go ahead and use the comments below. If you're in communication with me, use Voxer, or feel free to reach out to me individually, and take a look at, okay, where is a place in my life where I am saying I'm desiring behavioral change and I am not doing it. And something is going to be off in terms of this recipe. Your awareness of the payoff may not be fully developed. Your desire isn't anchored into a realistic moment in the progression of events. Realistic isn't the right word, but isn't anchored into a moment in which you have enough awareness of in the sequence of events. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm gonna trust this serves. Wish everyone a beautiful day, and